Hello, welcome to Bloomeroo. So today I went ahead and tried to do a little bit of experimenting and made some shaker keycaps. As you can see, these are Pokemon themed keycaps, more specifically the first three Eeveelutions. Well, anyway, I'll be using this Pokédex inspired base that I've made for another project, and I'll be testing a mold that I got from AliExpress for the shaker part. Oh, and this is a two-part mold that makes a dome square. Alright, so my idea here is to paint the keycap base, seal the upper part with a square, so the final keycap is gonna look kind of like this. Okay, I'm gonna start by painting the base with acrylic paints. And as usual, I already have prepared the keycap by priming it to have a smooth and nicely even layer. Now for all the details and little pieces, I like to use acrylic markers, and I've recently got this Posca pen, so that's what I'm gonna be using. Now I don't really know if it's very common for people to use acrylic markers to paint 3D models, but in this channel you're gonna be seeing me doing this pretty often, because in my experience, if you don't have an airbrush, the acrylic markers simply work wonderfully in flat surfaces. The only problem here would be, of course, the range of colors, but if you do paint over a marker layer, as you can see me doing right here, the final result is going to be almost the same. Also, in this particular case, I've layered a white coat, so the other colors would pop a little more. And as you can see here, I'm going to change for my Arctex markers, because I've learned in the hard and painful way of having to redo the little Pokédex buttons that my Posca markers were too big for those little tiny details, despite the fact that I bought the finest tips I could find. Anyway, moving on. Filling the base of the base is my favorite part of the painting process, because as you're gonna see, this is when everything comes together, and also it matches the Pokemon type, so yep, pretty cool. And now for the Pokemon that goes inside, I simply print them on sticker paper and cut little squares to fit inside the keycap. And first part completed. Now for this part, I like to put a single Pokeball in there to give it a little bit of character. But yeah, on to the next part, which is making the square dome. Now this is pretty much straightforward. I'll just fill the mold up with UV resin and cure it with UV light. Oh, and for this mold you should not fill it completely, unless you want a huge mess on your desk, like I had to do several times before learning my lesson. And also I'd recommend you to spread the resin like I'm doing here to decrease the chances of bubbles. So yeah, don't repeat my mistakes. And after demolding, which by the way is my favorite part on every resin project, I drill a little hole for all the charms and the liquid that's going inside. But before that, I'll be using more UV resin and a toothpick to perfectly, and I do mean perfectly, seal the square dome into the base. Did I tell you this should be perfect? Because I do not really like the idea of keyboards and liquids together, and if you're also not a fan of that, I'd suggest you to seal that thing tightly. And Now, to make the filling part easier, I'm gonna make some sort of a tape funnel by rolling it, and yeah, that's it, by rolling it. Now we can use that to fill up the shaker with any charms and trinkets we have. Now this is my first time trying to make an actual shaker. So I was kind of experimenting with the different things that I had. And after failing the first batch of keycaps that I made, which I'll be showing you in a minute, I came to the conclusion that less is more. So in the end, I just added some caviar beads and 1 or 2 flowers. So what I'm doing now is sealing the little hole with tape so I can add 1 more layer of resin, and this time I'm gonna cover the entire face. But hold the thought, I'm not gonna do that on the faces that I put tape on. In other words, I'm gonna cover everything but the upper face and the whole face. If you do this part wrong, then you're probably gonna end up with some tape inside your final project, and maybe you won't be able to fill the shaker with liquid anymore. And why are we doing this, you ask? To make sure no drop of liquid will get out of this thing. And finally, to fill the shaker, I'm gonna use mineral oil. I believe that baby oil is also an alternative, but it's pretty expensive here, so yep, mineral oil it is. Just avoid using water because it will evaporate and your shaker is gonna be as dry as... think of something dry. It will be like that. Also, make sure to leave a bubble in there so you have something to push everything around and have it all moving properly. After doing all that, we can finally seal the remaining faces. For the whole face, I cut up a shaker sheet, place on top of the hole, and then seal it with resin, and of course curing everything thoroughly. We're done with 1 keycap. Now I just have to make 2 more, but don't you worry, I've made the rest of them off camera. And here they are, the final results. I still think there's a lot of room for improvement. For starters, for example, I would not use this base model that I used because you can see here that the space is very limited and everything gets stuck on the little details of the model. So yeah, it would probably be better to get a flatter kind of model with a much simpler design. But for my first shaker keycaps, I think they turned out pretty good. Oh, and remember when I said this was my second attempt at making these? The whole less is more kind of thing. Yeah, so I bought this glitter pack thinking about this whole shaker experiment thing, and it has a lot of different shapes and types and colors. So yeah, I guess you could say that one can get very excited about such amount of possibilities, but the glitter was a huge mistake. As you can see here, it simply does not move. So in the end, no glitter. But anyway, here are the keycaps on the keyboard. And I also wanted to show you that this base was originally modeled for this keycaps, and these are also shaker keycaps, but these ones don't have much movement going on. Still, these are my favorite keycaps. But I guess this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm probably going to make more shaker keycaps, so yep. If you like this, consider subscribing. See you soon!